Hello students. This tutorial video will cover just the basic interface and orientation of ArcGIS Pro. It's one of the compendium videos for the September 4th class and really intended to be one of several quick tutorials that just get you comfortable with what all the buttons mean, what all the widgets mean, what all the words, the phrasings, and the icons mean on ArcGIS Pro, so that you feel like you have a basic knowledge of what the platform is trying to do, and we can keep building from that point week over week to learn more intermediate and advanced topics. So whenever you launch ArcGIS Pro, and just a reminder to those of you who are looking at my screen right here, anything I'm going to run here in Pro is going to look similar to yours. But remember that I'm running this on a Mac with a software item called Parallels. And all that means, right, is that, this system, my Mac, can run Windows or it can run Mac operating system. So you'll occasionally see some notes down here, that don't look familiar, but focus predominantly on the sort of Pro interface, which will be the same. So what is ArcGIS Pro? Really it's the platform that allows us to perform GIS, Geographic Information Systems, operations that is housed by a company called ESRI, sometimes referred to as Esri. In some ways, an analog could be Microsoft Word, right? This is the mapping platform that is Microsoft Word or Adobe Acrobat. It's sort of the industry standard platform for how you map and analyze data. But it is by no means the only platform. And we will touch on a couple throughout this semester. But this is really sort of the primary one, the industry standard, and it's an important one that you sort of learn. This concept ArcGIS Pro, it's not necessarily that there was an ArcGIS and now this is the advanced version, or that it's for professionals only. It's just sort of the rebranding that ESRI has given to this mapping software as it's moved into the future, where it links up to the online mapping infrastructure a lot better. The historical GIS platform, that we will have a video or two on here for, that we reference once or twice in class, is called Arcgis Desktop. And that was really static. It was everything you'd create on your computer, and it was great. And you could do a ton with it. But what ArcGIS Pro is going to allow you to do is to have that same sort of accessibility to create maps or run analytics on your desktop, but also link up to live web maps, right? To create content and post it online so anyone can access, to pull data from an online map, to work simultaneously. There is a lot of really interesting processes that will allow us to do that as we move through the semester. But for this video, this is really just an orientation to what we are seeing, how we get basically set up, what is the platform telling us. So this may look unfamiliar when you start. The first time you open, I imagine these are going to be blank. There's not going to be anything here. But everything we're creating here is a project. Right? And a project, can be thought of really as sort of every piece of data or map or related file that I'm going to use to ultimately perform some form of geographic visualization or analysis. And in time, this will become, more populated, hopefully with, better names than me, who I'm all over the place. But, that'll be up to you, sort of how you save things. This will be the first thing that we click, so I'm going to come back to that in a second, but quickly want to remind you of this. This is what's driving your platform, or should be. I've sent out a few emails on this, and we'll review this again on the 4th, but we are signing into this with what's called a named user license. So you should have been granted or in the process of getting an ArcGIS Online account from the University of Pennsylvania. If this doesn't look like anything there, you'd come up and hit sign in. It would pop up with a username and a password, and you would enter your account information, and it would then pop up your name, University of Pennsylvania, and you'd have all the access to the bells and the whistles that we need. So come on in here to new, and many of these won't necessarily make sense to you yet, and so we'll return to them when they need to. But the one word that probably lines up and that you do know is map, and so let's start it. That'll be the first thing that we do. We're going to create a map. Right, so, it looks a little weird. Hey, you just said create a map. What do you mean? Why am I going to a project? That's just sort of the name that Pro uses. It's going to be almost like we're creating a mini folder on our desktop, and inside that folder is going to live all of the data, all of the maps that we save and everything. Now, it will always default to here. You'll see if you're on a PC, it'll look a little different. See, name, documents, ArcGIS projects. That's totally fine. You'll learn in this video and in subsequent ones, we don't really mess around with the Windows Explorer. This is certainly how you would do things on in a Windows machine. But for ArcGIS, the manner in which data is structured, something we'll review a little bit later, sort of precludes you from doing this. And I don't want to bury the lead too much, but you'll see sort of why we don't play around with folders in the traditional way. But that said, right, if you're not comfortable having to sort of navigate to the raw files all the time, and you want to build something on your desktop where you store your folders, you can always do that, right? You come to computer, come to desktop, create a folder. So I'm going to give it a name here. I'll name this August 31st. Oop. Let's call August 31st. I'm happy to have it here. Hit OK. It's going to create my project. And now I get to my opening interface. So it's not that dissimilar to like SharePoint or any traditional sort of Microsoft-based Windows app. You have a bunch of sort of tabs up here, and anytime you'll click on a tab, as we'll see in a second, it allows you to have access to more options. You have the central interface here, which is a map, the primary thing that we're going to play with in a few minutes. And you have these two elements on the side that maybe don't quite make sense yet, but will very soon. The first is contents, which will eventually include all of the things that we map. There'll be a video alongside this that talks briefly about different types of data and how they appear in ArcPro. Before I ever learned GIS, my whole thinking about map, right, was I often thought about this, just this sort of static paper-looking map that had countries or cities or states or whatever, bodies of water. But when you're playing around with GIS, Geographic Information Systems, you actually break apart each piece of data individually, meaning you may eventually have a piece of data that allows you to look at just the country of United States, or that might allow you to look at just the states, or that may allow you to look at different points where things happen throughout history, or maybe that lets you play with the road system. And so even though we're starting with just this one here, right, topographic, just my map here, right, that I can turn on or off, that base map, that background, this will soon populate with all of the pieces of geographic data that we can map. But where does that data come from? And this we'll dive into a little bit more in the other video from this week, which is about the different types of data. But it relates to that concept I teased a few minutes ago. The only way to look at data in ArcGIS Pro is here through the catalog. Now, we will predominantly focus on a few folders here. Really, folders is what we're going to look at. But as you begin to work through, in a couple of minutes or so, you'll see that I can create multiple maps. They can keep going. I can create my own different types of tools. I can create my own datas to store things. Address locators is a concept we may not necessarily get to in this, but you'll see in a couple weeks. This is how I can create things that will allow me to map spaces. And then folders, which is the primary thing we're going to return to in a second. This is how you mimic the visual orientation of your machine, your computer, so that wherever you're storing the geographic data that we're going to map, you can access it and bring it into ArcGIS Pro. There's also something I want you to see over here in Portal. And we won't get to this yet until we get to a video around how we interface with web-based GIS with ArcGIS Online. But this portal is effectively what allows you to see different maps or content you've created online. Now, I have not yet created or posted anything to my University of Pennsylvania account. But if I were to sign into my one from work, you would see this populated with maps, live maps that we have, sort of that I've created at U3 Advisors, or pieces of data or other content. So I want you to know that it's there, but not something we'll return to yet. So let's pop back to what does matter, which is this folder. Now, it has created, as it said in the beginning, a folder for us, August 31st, but we actually maybe have data in different folders. And you'll see that right every time I create a video for you to watch at home or activities for class, it's going to come in almost all instances, except those where I want you to find data on your own, it's going to come with data that you need to use that is stored in a folder. And so what you need to actually do here is right-click on that folders. And this is the first of 10,000 right-clicks we will do this semester. I will remind you every video, every moment of every day, the single most useful tool you can have when you're stuck in ArcGIS is to right-click everything you see, because suddenly all kinds of new options will appear. And in this one, it's the important option. Let me add a folder connection. So I'll add one. You do this however makes sense to you, but what I like to do is I like to pick whatever the largest containing folder is. And for me, that's desktop. That's where I will store every other piece of data. So I'll pick desktop, I'll hit OK, and then desktop will appear. If I open desktop and I navigate to a folder I prepared here called Pro Orientation Data, I can start to see all of these interesting shapes appear. Now, in a secondary video, I will go through what each of these mean and demonstrate, but these are the pieces of geographic data that we will map. And so to end this video, let's drag one of those in. We might as well do neighborhood crime populations. We can drag that one in here. See that it orients it to Philadelphia, and I'll pause the video here. The next one will actually start exploring, what just happened and how we engage with the material that we have. And then the final video will dive a little bit more into some of the other pieces of data that we have in this folder to see how they depict themselves and what the differences are.